So we've got interrogatories, we've got subpoenas, and then we have depositions. And probably you've seen that on TV or something where the lawyers sit down, there's a court reporter with a steno machine and all kinds of equipment, and he or she sits at the end of the table, and then your lawyer sits across from your spouse and asks questions, and those questions have to be answered under oath because the court reporter swears the witness in at the beginning of the session. So sometimes you get the interrogatory answers, but they don't look complete, and you're not satisfied with the information that you've gotten, so that's when you might want to take a deposition. And in addition to taking a deposition of the opposing party, you might also take a deposition of some of his experts. Maybe he's hired a forensic accountant to review the tax records or to do a business valuation of his business. Then your lawyer is going to want to take a deposition of that person. And then maybe say, your husband says that you're a drunk and you shouldn't have custody of the children. And he's got 6 witnesses who are going to say that in court. Well, your lawyer might want to take a deposition of those witnesses and say, okay, when did you see her drinking and where were you and what day was that? And put them through a kind of an intense questioning process, because then you can take that information and let's say that he has a witness who said, well, I saw her drunk on the 4th of July, you know, at the county park in our neighborhood. But then you go and you have credit card statements that show you were visiting your mother in Wisconsin on the 4th of July and you couldn't have even been in the county park. That gives you the information that you've got a deposition of this witness who's now you can prove that they're lying. So sometimes when you have some serious allegations being made against you, you want to be able to be prepared for those by having a deposition so that you can then go back with your lawyer and figure out what's going to be your opposing evidence to show that that person's not telling the truth. So that's another way that you go about gathering legal discovery information as part of the discovery process, in addition to interrogatories, subpoenas, and then there are depositions. So those are the 3 main ways that you gather information during this period of time between when you filed for divorce and when you're going to get your final divorce. This is the time when you have to do some issue spotting, and one of the main things you want to think about during this time period is, might I have a claim for separate property? Did I bring anything into this marriage? Did I have retirement before we got married? Did I have a savings account? Who owned the house? Where did the down payment come from? I've got this period of time to start tracing my separate property to try to get that out of the loop and get that so it's not included as part of the divorce settlement. Is there a business that has to be valued? Is alimony necessary while you're in this temporary time period to figure out if you're entitled to alimony, or to figure out if you have to pay alimony, which is also called spousal maintenance in other jurisdictions. So we've talked a little bit about getting a vocational assessment in the alimony session, and this is the time when a vocational assessment would occur. This is a time when a forensic accountant would take a look at your records if you think that there's any money missing, or you have to do a valuation of stock options, or you just have to gather the information that you need to figure out what all of your assets are. And at the same time, you're also figuring out, what are my debts? And so you might be sending subpoenas out, because if you might live in a jurisdiction where the debt is any debt that either person generates is a community debt, or you might live someplace where the debt sort of follows the person who has their name on the credit card. And that's an issue that you need to figure out for your particular state. What do we have for debt? What do we have for assets? Do we have a retirement account? Do we have a pension? Those pensions have to be valued as part of your divorce to figure out what the value of the pension is as part of the process of dividing up your assets. So you might want to get a pension valuation during this process as part of your divorce process. So while you're gathering information, you're also evaluating the information that you're getting, and you're also putting values on assets as you get them. And you have to value your cars, and you have to value your boat or cabin or whatever you all have, or RV, or you don't necessarily value all of your personal property. But also during this period of time, you're going to be gathering information about who should be, what the custodial situation for your children should be if you have them. So you might be hiring, some places they have people called friend of the court, other places they're called parenting evaluators, other places they're called guardian ad litem or case manager. But anyway, in most jurisdictions there are professionals who are sometimes lawyers, but usually mental health professionals, who are hired or appointed to do some investigation to figure out where the children should be and what should be the custodial arrangement at the end of the divorce. So while you're gathering all this financial stuff and while you're working on, all the interrogatories and depositions, you're also doing that same thing with regarding to the parenting situation. And at the same time, you're also meeting with your accountant to try to figure out what you want in the settlement. Is it better for you to take the house? All of the financial issues, what are you going to do for a job? What am I going to do for alimony? So you're working on all of these things. That's part of the divorce process. You have a lot of tools available to you during this time period to gather this data. And then ultimately, then somewhere along the line, after you feel like you've got all the data that you need, you engage in something called alternative dispute resolution, which is also known as mostly mediation, sometimes arbitration. And we have a whole session on that, so I'm not going to go into that in detail. But the point is that once you've gathered all of your information, it will be time for you to probably make a try at mediating your case, which is sort of getting your case settled out of court so that you don't have to subject your family and your finances and air all of your dirty laundry in court. So during this time period, you gather that information so you get yourself into mediation. And then if mediation is not successful, you can continue negotiating for some period of time. And if all else fails, you end up in a trial. And a trial is always hugely stressful and hugely traumatic, and most people would say it should be avoided at all costs because you end up subjecting your family and your finances and everything about yourselves to a judge to make a decision. And the judges, they don't know you, they don't know your kids, they don't know what you're passionate about and what your life is about, and so they're going to do the best they can to make a decision based on the limited information they get in 2 days or 2 weeks or however long your trial goes on. So most people prefer to settle their case in mediation. And in any event, you're going to have what are called final orders, and that is like your decree of dissolution. It's called different things in different states, but it's a final order on divorce, and it's going to say who gets what asset and where are the kids going to live and who's going to have to pay alimony, and all of the factors that you've been accumulating information about for the past many months or over a year is going to be laid out in this final divorce paperwork, and then that becomes a court order. And those court orders are difficult, if not almost impossible, to change. So you don't want to get hurried into something. You don't want to say, I've had people come in to see me and say, well, I had a woman who came in and she agreed to a parenting plan where kids lived with their father because she just wanted to get it done. And then her plan was, once I get in a house in a different part of town, then I'll reopen the parenting plan and I'll get custody back. And what she didn't realize, because she didn't have a lawyer, is that once you entered into that parenting plan, you're kind of done. And unless there's a substantial change in circumstances or some reason that the court would want to reopen a divorce settlement or a final parenting plan, you can't just say, now I've moved across town. It's one thing if you're going to move to Illinois and you live in California, then you reopen your parenting plan. But if you're moving 10 miles down the road and now you want the kids to come live with you and change school districts, it's not that easy. So it's really important to understand, no matter how much pressure you're under and how much you want to hurry this up and get it over with, you really need to take your time. You really need to do your homework. And we talked a lot in a couple of the first sessions about having a vision for your divorce and having a team around you. And during this period of time between when you file and when you finalize your divorce, when you really want to think about how you want to be during that period of time and how do you see yourself and what do you see as your goals. And if you have a goal, and we talked and you might want to watch the vision session, if you think about how you want to be a year out from your divorce or 5 years out from your divorce, that sort of informs how you want to be during this time period, so that you want to make sure that you sort of keep your integrity about how you go through the process and really work hard and really gather information and really do your homework and rely on your team of people, which is basically your friends and family who can see you a little bit bigger than you see yourself, because it's easy to get sort of into a bicker or get frustrated or get in a situation during this time period where you just want to retaliate and you want to get back and you become revengeful, and you might be mad because your husband got a girlfriend or he's abandoned the family or he's a bad dad or the kids don't want to go see him or he's mean, and you get all deep into all kinds of huge emotional turmoil. And at the same time, while you're feeling all those emotional feelings because you're in the biggest transition probably, or one of the biggest transitions of your life, you got to make these business decisions about taxes and CPAs and alimony and protecting your financial future and your retirement. And so You've got to find people who can really help you in this process and can really be supportive of you. And if you're going to use a lawyer, then find a lawyer who's emotionally supportive of you and who can, I have people come to me and say, well, my last lawyer said, don't call me and complain about stuff. I'm not your psychologist. Well, that's true. Lawyers are not psychologists, but people who do family law have to have sort of some people skills and have to understand the huge amount of stress that you're going through when you're in this situation. And they have to be able to help you make really complicated business decisions while you're freaking out, and to try to incorporate your friends and family to help you get the support that you need. And then at the same time you're afraid for your financial future, you're also thinking about what's best for your kids, but you tend to want to kind of do it what's best for you because you're maybe mad at your husband. But while you're in the middle of this huge upheaval, now you have to say, oh, I got to think about this from my children's perspective and what would really be best for my kids. They have a dad. I don't like him very much, but he is their dad, and they probably need some time with him. So now you're talking to parenting experts, you're reading a whole bunch of books, and oh, by the way, you probably have a job, and you've got kids, and you've got to keep a household. So it's a really stressful time. You need to take very good care of yourself. And now he sounds like a mama or something, but it really is true. You really have to take care of yourself, and you really have to weigh all of these complicated decisions in an emotional state and think of the best interest of your children and try to keep your whole family afloat. So I'm certainly not saying it's easy. I'm saying this is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. But the more education you have and the more you understand the process, the less uncertainty there is for you. I think the easier it is to put one foot in front of the other and take the step that has to be taken on any given day. And it's kind of probably like going up a mountain. You don't necessarily want to look at the whole thing every day because it's really overwhelming and scary. But if you kind of know, okay, this is where I'm in the process, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. When your lawyer says interrogatories, you don't say, what's that? Or if your lawyer says deposition or, mediation or parenting evaluator, there's all this lingo. And so my goal is that at least you know what those words mean, and at least you kind of know that there's things that you have to know about in your particular state. And you have to know how to best work with your lawyer so that you can make the best use of his or her time and not be in there, having to have stuff explained to you over and over, which is, expensive for you and sometimes frustrating for your lawyer. So hopefully this has been helpful to just understand the process so that you can just sort of step back and say, here's where I am, here's where I'm going. It makes the process a little bit easier on a day-to-day basis. The more you know and the more you educate yourself, the more books you read, the more you research on your court websites, the better off you're going to be. It is information that you need to understand, and like I said, the more you know about it, the better you're going to be.